This is CBC Vancouver News.
A little hot, a little sweaty.
These crews out here working in the heat, they're doing their best they can.
As relentless heat stretches on, campfires will soon be banned right across the province. Plus,
with a focus on that clinical experience out in community.
BC hails a new medical school, but critics say it can't come fast enough. And
tough loss. I mean, I feel like Canada hung in there for a lot of it.
After a historic run, Canada loses to Argentina in a David and Goliath Copa America matchup. Hello, I'm Michelle Ghoussoub. Thanks for joining us. Tonight, Highway 77 from Fort Nelson to BC's border with the Northwest Territories has been closed due to an out-of-control wildfire. A number of wildfires are burning in that area. Drive BC did not confirm which is threatening the highway. But first, we go to the southeastern corner of the province, where temperature records are being shattered. Corey Bullock leads us off tonight with coverage from Cranbrook.
Streets that are typically bustling with people are empty today, with many likely retreating to air-conditioned spaces as intense heat descends on the interior. But for construction workers like Sam Wallace, it's just another day at work.
A little hot, a little sweaty, but almost makes the days go by faster. So,
like many others, Wallace and his co-workers are starting their days a little earlier than usual, at the relatively cool time of 7 a.m., giving them relief during the hottest part of the day, the late afternoon. But the heat, he says, is something they're getting used to.
Seems like more and more every summer, yeah. Getting hotter and hotter.
A heat warning has been issued for BC's southern interior. Environment Canada says the hot weather will stick around until the end of the week. And over in Boundary Country, the extreme heat is being felt by road crews.
For the crews, the important thing is making sure that they feel supported, that they can take breaks if they're starting to feel signs of any kind of heat stress, out of breath, lightheaded, that they sit in a vehicle with air conditioning. We supply lots of water, electrolytes, and starting early in the morning, starting at 5 a.m. before the sun comes up.
Environment Canada says the elevated temperatures do pose a moderate risk to public health, and WorkSafe BC says it's important for employers to brief their workers on the risks.
Heat stress can set in quite quickly, and so again, it's really important that all workers are engaged in those discussions before the heat of the day, which we see is going to be quite significant for the coming weeks.
She recommends doing what these crews have done and adjusting work hours.
Cooling areas with lots of shade, appropriate work-rest cycles.
And while the heat brings with it a challenge,
kind of brings everyone closer together because we're all in it together,
it's more bearable with friends. Corey Bullock, CBC News, Cranbrook.
On the heels of this hot, dry stretch, a sweeping campfire ban is about to take effect, covering all of BC as of noon Friday. This is the first time this season we're seeing an all-out campfire ban in the province. The rules came down quickly through the day, starting this morning with just the Kamloops region. By midday, the Southeast Fire Centre and most of the Coastal Fire Centre were included, and by afternoon, it expanded province-wide to include the Cariboo, Northwest, and Prince George regions. A warning tonight, soaring temperatures can prove deadly for pets. So veterinarians in the province are urging pet owners to keep animals in cool places at all times and to look for these signs before it gets too hot.
And just excessive panting, excessive drooling, and showing some signs of weakness and incoordination. At that point, we're getting too far down and we need to really stop what we're doing.
A dip in the water is highly recommended, but if your pets don't have access to the beach, best to keep them indoors. You're also reminded never to leave an animal in a hot car. And to the island now, where a blue-green algae bloom alert at Elk Lake and Beaver Lake has expanded to include Thetis Lake as well. The algae usually produces a visible blue-green sheen, which appears as surface scum on the water. The Capital Regional District warns blue-green algae is known to produce cyanotoxins. If ingested with the water, it could be harmful to humans and even lethal to pets. Visitors are urged to avoid contact with the algae and to keep animals on a leash so they stay out of the lakes. Wearing sunscreen to protect your skin and prevent cancer may sound like common sense, but using sunscreen has become the latest target of some health influencers on TikTok. They claim some ingredients in sunscreen are harmful in large doses. We went to a medical doctor for some advice.
Well, that's the key, right? In high concentrations, but the amount that's actually absorbed is minuscule and very, very small. The significance of that has not been determined. The significance of getting too much sun on your skin is definitely known, right?
Another claim made on social media is that you can craft your diet to protect you from skin cancer, but he says there is no evidence of that. The Canadian Cancer Society warns more than 11,000 Canadians will be diagnosed with melanoma skin cancer this year alone. Well, residents of Merritt are being told to not use water unless absolutely necessary, all because of a pump at the city's main distribution well failed overnight. Tom Popick is there, finding out how locals are coping with the news mid-heat wave.
After 2 days of record heat and the temperatures once again edging towards 40, it's not the kind of day that you want a municipal waterworks to break down.
Hotter now than normal, but you know, we'll survive.
Aldo Del Vecchio is dropping by the municipal pool, the city now offering a free day to help residents cool off after it was forced to impose water restrictions.
Well, this morning it wasn't one dry, but it was significantly lower than it should have been. The 3 reservoirs were all significantly lower than they should have been.
Last night, a water gasket on the city's main well leaked, spraying water on an electrical panel and shutting it down. The worry is reduced pumping and capacity will slowly reduce reservoir levels and pressure.
What we need to make sure is that we have enough water in the reservoirs so that our fire department has pressure to be able to fight a fire in the community if that should happen.
It could take 48 hours before repairs are completed. In the meantime, the city has requested residents to limit all unnecessary water use, like watering lawns or car washing. But for the moment, there is no bylaw enforcement or fines.
And it looks like people are being conscientious. They're taking this very seriously, so the water levels are going up a little quicker than we thought they were going to.
Drinking water isn't affected. Residents are being urged to stay hydrated and can still take showers and baths or hit that pool. Aldo has his own solution.
Well, I live in Lower Nicola. I got my own water out there.
The city is telling residents to expect an update on repairs by tomorrow and to also check social media and the municipal website for any updates. Tom Popick, CBC News, Merritt.
With the province struggling to keep up with the doctor shortage, an announcement from the Premier today fell on desperate ears, the nuts and bolts of a new medical school at Simon Fraser University. But as Katie DeRosa explains, it will be another 5 years before grads can actually practice medicine.
Tiffany Dang hopes to be one of the first doctors to graduate from SFU's new medical school.
Future students of this school should be excited about the program's potential to revolutionize medical education in BC.
Dang, a fourth-year undergrad at SFU, stood next to Premier David Eby on Tuesday as the province announced new details on the medical school slated to open in Surrey in 2026. The province has earmarked more than $33 million for the school's interim space on SFU's Surrey campus as well as leased space nearby. Another $27 million will go towards operating costs this year. It's the first medical school in Western Canada with a dedicated family doctor program. The need is urgent. The health crisis has left about 800,000 British Columbians without a family physician. It's also left hospitals scrambling with staffing shortages, which this weekend alone forced the closure of 4 ERs in Interior Health.
There is no question but that delivering that standard of care is more challenging in smaller northern and rural and remote communities. That's why today's announcement, a new medical school, training up family doctors here in Surrey, in the fastest growing community.
The head of BC's College of Family Physicians, Dr. Vincent Wong, said this new medical school is desperately needed, with doctors experiencing rising levels of burnout. But as the opposition points out, the first crop of doctors won't graduate until 2029.
Simply not good enough. I don't think anyone can describe that as anything other than a complete lack of urgency.
The school will initially have space for 48 students, but will eventually open up to 120 students a year. Katie DeRosa, CBC News, Victoria.
The Premier, meanwhile, wants to meet with the family of Tory Dunn. They've been very vocal in their calls for stricter bail laws in Canada weeks after their daughter was killed inside her home. David Eby says federal bail reforms passed by the federal government this year were supposed to make it more difficult for repeat and violent offenders to be released on bail.
We were successful in getting those rules changed, and they should have prevented this from happening to the Dunn family, and they didn't.
30-year-old Tory Dunn was attacked in her own home in Surrey on June 16th and later died in hospital. A man has since been charged with second-degree murder. He has a lengthy criminal past and had been on probation for previous convictions. He was already facing a charge of aggravated assault for an alleged stabbing that happened 3 weeks before Dunn was killed. WorkSafe BC says more than $2 billion in time loss claims were filed in the last 5 years for musculoskeletal injuries. Those are things like sprains, strains, inflammation, as well as disorders like tendinitis and carpal tunnel syndrome.
The number is high, and we've been tracking this for many years. Over the last 5 years, MSIs, we know, are the most common workplace injury, accounting for about 30% of all WorkSafe BC time loss claims and 26% of claims costs.
These injuries often come about from lifting objects or repetitive motions. They're common across many industries, but most often seen in workers in the healthcare, retail, and local government sectors. Well, new government research looks at how climate change influenced a recent heat wave in Quebec, Ontario, and Atlantic Canada. It's the first time Ottawa has done this kind of quick-turn analysis. As the CBC's Anand Rome explains, it's an effort to keep climate change top of mind during extreme heat events.
In BC's lower mainland, the air is thick, a heat dome trapping smog and spiking temperatures, pushing people to find ways to cool down.
Ice water. Can you say it a little louder, buddy? Say, eat ice cream. Eat ice cream.
As almost everyone across the West finds ways to beat the heat, new research by Environment and Climate Change Canada is revealing how much influence climate change had on a mid-June heat wave in Ontario, Quebec, and Atlantic Canada, pushing temperatures in some areas into the upper 30s.
Our finding was that an event like this was made at least 2 to 10 times more likely by human-caused climate change.
Experts say the new rapid research reinforces how burning fossil fuels over decades has powered extreme heat and drives home the need to build defenses.
You have to have infrastructure that can deal with these levels of heat, which before you might have said, okay, it's such a rare case that we don't really need to include that in our risk planning.
It's never this bad. We've never experienced anything in the 40s in Vancouver.
Research following BC's heat dome in 2021 that killed hundreds found climate change could eventually make extreme events like it far more frequent.
These changes are not random circumstance. These changes are because of a well understood scientific phenomenon that is going to continue to impact our lives.
And as relief comes to Canadians out west by midweek, Environment Canada says it expects to study just how much climate change influenced this heat wave as well. Anand Ram, CBC News, Toronto.
Disappointment tonight, but hope for the future as Canada loses its first semifinal ever at the Copa America against Argentina. Stay with us. Canada's semi-final game against Argentina in the Copa America ended with a 2-0 loss, but the game was described as the biggest ever for Canadian soccer, a David and Goliath battle many fans didn't think they'd ever see, with Canada ranked 48th going up against the #1 team.
This is like a chance for Canada to play a really high-class opponent before the World Cup in 2026 and just get these guys some more experience on this stage and playing against players of that caliber. It's sad, but it's hopefully going to lead to bigger things.
Just really proud to see where soccer's at in our country. I mean, for kids growing up that are playing and can see that, it's something really cool that they can strive for and see that they can play at the highest level.
We have the materials, we have the players, but unfortunately the plans and this is all depend on the technical coaching, to be frank.
The latest now on a data breach at Ticketmaster. The CBC's Vanessa Lee looks at the impact it could have on potentially hundreds of millions of customers who bought tickets earlier this year.
It's a cruel start to the summer for many Ticketmaster customers who bought tickets to events in North America.
Oh, we just got one, yeah.
It wasn't hard to find Canadians who got the email telling them their personal information could be at risk.
Oh, definitely not happy with it. Wondering if there's a way it could have been prevented for sure.
The ticket seller says between April 2nd and May 18th, an unauthorized user gained access to a cloud database hosted by a third-party provider, obtaining names, contact information, and credit card numbers.
This is a massive hack. We're talking about over potentially 500 million people whose information may have been compromised.
Weeks ago, a hacking group called Shiny Hunters claims it stole the personal information of more than 500 million Ticketmaster customers. Ticketmaster has not confirmed a connection.
This isn't your run-of-the-mill hacking organization. This is an organization that's highly coordinated and has sophisticated tools.
While Ticketmaster says it's investigating with help from outside experts and contacted U.S. law enforcement, consumers are encouraged to take their own actions.
Monitor your credit reports to make sure that your no credit applications have been taken out in your name. You want to be vigilant.
We are writing to notify you of a...
Customers like Roz Forbes are angry and considering legal action. She noticed fraudulent activity on her account at the end of April and now believes it's linked to this hack.
I had about $10,000 of weird charges on it that I didn't authorize. And I also got a bunch of weird emails that somebody was applying for car loans.
Ticketmaster is offering what it's calling identity monitoring free to its affected customers to look out for their personal data on the dark web, though some say that's just not enough. Vanessa Lee, CBC News, Montreal.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is coming face-to-face with world leaders who are pressuring Canada to meet its NATO commitments. A looming U.S. presidential election is ramping up the tension. Evan Dyer is in Washington with more.
As Britain's new Prime Minister headed off to Washington for the NATO summit, he pledged unity and more defence spending.
This NATO summit is an opportunity for allies to stand together to strengthen their resolve. I am committed to that 2.5.
2.5% of GDP on defence. That's above the NATO threshold of 2%. Britain, like most of NATO, has been spending more lately and plans to go even further. Canada spent more too, but is still well short of the 2% benchmark. It's now one of only 9 countries that missed the mark, with no plan to get there by the end of the decade. The Trudeau government says it's had to rebuild from record low defence spending under the previous Conservative government.
Under Stephen Harper's Conservatives, Canada's defence spending fell to less than 1%, to 0.9% of GDP.
But that argument doesn't carry much weight on Capitol Hill, where a bipartisan group of U.S. senators recently wrote to Justin Trudeau expressing profound disappointment at Canada's progress.
This morning, looking forward to a great meeting with this distinguished group of senators.
Trudeau met with Senate leaders to try to persuade them that Canada is on the right track. But the pressure on Canada could dramatically increase if Donald Trump is re-elected.
We do need to see more disincentives, and I think it'll be important
for Canada to understand that. I think those
Elbridge
disincentives
Colby
need to be
served in the last Trump administration, and he's been floated as a potential national security advisor if Trump returns. He says he'd like to see trade actions against Canada and possibly try to boot Canada from the G7.
What kind of signal does it send for Canada to be in the G7 when it essentially mocks the bare minimum of what's required?
Those kinds of threats are unprecedented, and Canadian officials know that what is now really gentle chiding by the Biden administration could turn into a no-holds-barred high-pressure campaign if the Democrats lose in November. Evan Dyer, CBC News, Washington.
You're looking at a live shot of the White Rock Pier. Darius has your full forecast next.
Hi, I'm Amy Bell, and here's what's in your CBC Vancouver inbox.
CBC returns as a media partner of the Surrey Fusion Festival, July 20th to the 21st. The festival features over 50 cultural pavilions that will incorporate the theme of landmarks of the world into their displays. For more information, visit surreyfusionfestival.ca. And never miss a special programming series, event, or contest. Subscribe to CBC Vancouver's e-newsletter and keep connected with us.
The weather update is brought to you by Direct Buy Furnace. To cool and clean the air in your home, Call Direct Buy Furnace, installing Trane, the most reliable heating and cooling brand.
And our Darius Madavi joins us now for a look at the forecast. Darius, the fire situation in the province really heating up over the past 24 hours. What are the conditions you're tracking at this time?
Fire danger has jumped up, and it's largely in part to it's largely due to the extreme heat that we've had recently. Those extremely dry conditions that is continuing to drive fire danger up and up. Look at just where we were a week ago. Now there's very little, even yellow, moderate danger in the province. We're virtually all high or extreme fire danger across BC. Of course, where there's fire, there is also smoke. Up in the northeast, we're looking at some extreme smoke conditions as well, both today, or we did see them today, and we're going to see them again tomorrow with that really, really dangerous smoke levels. Here in the south, we've mostly escaped that so far this year, especially here on the coast. That could be changing in the days ahead as we may see some new fire starts, and also that fire down in Washington that may blow some smoke our way. In terms of those highs, we're going to continue to see those climb into or stay high into tomorrow. Then they start to moderate a little bit, but if you're in the southern interior, it's still going to be very hot for the next little while. I wouldn't expect to see too much relief on the way anytime soon. Still remaining very hot and very dry, except for the possibility of some thunderstorms, because now that that ridge has started to retreat, we're not getting that suppressive effect on those storms and that lightning, so we may actually see some new lightning and some new fire starts in the days ahead. If you take a look here in the northwest, we are going to see some precipitation break in. It's not all good news, though. It's going to be a cold front, which may sound good, because, cooler temperatures, good for fires. But with that cold front also comes higher winds, comes possibility of storms and lightning, and maybe even in the northeast, some dry lightning as we see those more unstable conditions move in. So not necessarily the news you want to hear for fires. Dry cold front is the term you want to hear least in terms of fire forecasting, fire weather. Doesn't look like one of those just yet, but that could change, so we're keeping a close eye on that. Still, mostly sunny conditions across the province. A slight chance of rain in some parts in the central interior. We may see that thunderstorm risk reappear in some places, like down in the southeast now, but potentially also the Okanagan. Tomorrow, we'll get a better idea of that. And across Vancouver, it still looks sunny for the most part. Maybe a little bit of cloud moving in towards the end of the week. We're still hot. We're still dry. Even if the heat warnings drop, stay safe and make sure you're keeping an eye on those who might be more vulnerable.
All right. Thanks, Darius.
Thank you.
And that is your late news for Tuesday. Thank you for joining us tonight. For news anytime, you can visit our website. That's cbc.ca/BC. Your next local news is on the early edition on CBC Radio 1, and that starts tomorrow morning at 5:30. Good night.